Thanks everyone for coming out. I guess you call this Thanksgiving weekend, although we gave our official Thanksgiving talk last Sunday. But keeping in the same mood of giving thanks and gratitude, we decided to entitle our talk today, Your History with Krishna, or Your History with God. Everything's inspired by the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is the founder of Caru of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Om Aganati Marandasya Ganangana Sadhyachat Surun Miritam Yana Tashmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dharati Swaparantikam. We're delighted to have that little toddler with us, on condition that he be quiet. Okay. You might have to go downstairs, from which point you can still hear pretty well, but we're good for now. We don't have a quiet room. We haven't evolved to that. Or I think they call it a cry room. So when you look back over your life, we're asking you tonight, consider to some of the things that you faced that at the time you didn't think you'd make it through. That obstacle was so large. That breakup broke your heart so badly. The medical report was so negative. You did not, at the time, see a way. But, hey, here you are. So I'm assuming that God turned it around. He gave you a strength that you didn't know that you had. Brought the right person when you thought you'd always be lonely. Promoted you. Gave you that good break. Things fell into place. Now, you're further along than you could have ever imagined. Our message today is that wasn't a lucky break. It wasn't a coincidence. It was the hand of Krishna or God. You should have been stuck. You should have been addicted. You should have been broke, depressed, and lonely. But God or Krishna made a way in the dark when you didn't see a way. You can say here tonight that we didn't get here all by ourselves. It wasn't just our good luck. It wasn't our good looks, nor our hard work, nor our talents. But there was a huge measure in the equation of the grace of God. He made things happen in the past that we would have never been able to make happen on our own. Now, it's a fact. None of us like difficulties. If we had our choice, we would not face them. However, those challenges not only prepared you to become the kind of person that you are today, but they also helped forge you for the future responsibilities, future steps in your walk with God. But what I'm basically saying, and all this boils down to, is we have a history with God. So when you're in a rough time, you don't see a way out, I suggest that instead of being discouraged and negative, you can just go back, flick through the archives, and remember how Krishna or God turned your health around. Remember how He saved you from that auto accident. Remember how He brought you out of the trouble that you got yourself into in the first place. And when you remember how Krishna has protected you, prompted you, directed you, healed you, restored you, guess what? Your faith is going to experience a renaissance. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Instead of thinking, I'll never get out of this problem, you'll say with confidence, Krishna did it for me in the past. He's going to make a way for me in the future as well. You won't complain about the problem. Based on your, what? History with Krishna, you know how deep down inside that somehow or other, even though you don't see a way, He's going to find a way to take you from glory to glory. And in fact, getting through this challenge is going to be the fuel. It's going to be the fuel with which you're going to face the next one enthusiastically and excitedly. This is Queen Kunti. She's spoken about in the Mahabharata. She had 5 pious sons called the Pandavas. She experienced firsthand the amazing power that Krishna exerted to bring her and her sons out of so many difficulties. On one occasion, when her sons were in exile in the forest, living from hand to mouth in the campground there, their enemy, Duryodhana, after pleasing a sage called Durvasa Muni and getting a boon from Durvasa, Duryodhana said, "Oh, the Pandavas are living in the forest. I suggest you go and pay them a visit. They'll be delighted to see you." Well, what Duryodhana knew was that Durvasa is an incarnation of Lord Shiva, and he definitely has an anger management issue. If Durvasa curses you, not only you, but future and past generations will also be burned to fire. But Duryodhana knew that when Durvasa went to the campground of the Pandavas, they would not be able to offer him a customary meal. He also knew that wherever Durvasa traveled, and this is the kicker, he went with 10,000 disciples. So Duryodhana sent this mercurial, irascible sage to the poor Pandavas with 10,000 disciples after having gone a long hike and arriving in the campsite hungry and grouchy. So what happened? How do you feed 10,000 sages when you're living hand to mouth in the forest and you don't get any advance notice at all? Duryodhana, in fact, he did one extra thing to show you how diabolic he was. He told Durvasa that I'll send a messenger a day ahead so that when you arrive, the Pandavas will be all ready to have a beautiful lunch for you. He didn't do that. Pandavas had no notice. Nothing was prepared. So all they could do when this entourage showed up was just stall for time. They said, well, let us lay everything out, and in the meantime, you go to the river with your disciples and wash your hands and get ready. So when the sages went down to the river, Krishna, save us! Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. There was nothing they can do. Can anyone think of anything? If you were in that circumstance, can you have any brilliant ideas? Feeding 10,000 disciples in the middle of the forest? The only thing they really could do, and which they did do, was supplicating Krishna. Krishna, we're in a bad spot here. I don't see a way. But Krishna, you can make a way where there isn't a way. And not only will you do that, and have you done it for in the past, but you always do it in a really clever, almost humorous way. The Lord moves by mysterious ways, his wonders to perform, plants his footstep on the sea, rides upon the storm. Deep and unfathomable minds of never-failing skill, he treasures up his bright designs and works his never-failing will. But Krishna appeared. Krishna appeared because he was appearing on the planet as a historical personality, but he's also simultaneously within the hearts of every living being and within the atom. So in answer to their cries, Krishna appeared and he said, what's the problem? They said, well, we have to feed these sages or they're going to curse us to die, and we've got about 15 minutes to do it. So what would Krishna do? He said, you've had your lunch recently? They said, yeah, we just had our lunch. Is there any morsel of vegetable left in the pot? Said, I doubt it. He said, look and see. So when they looked very carefully, they saw a microscopic piece of spinach in the bottom of the pot. And Krishna said, give it to me. And they said, well, Krishna, what's that going to do? I realize you've probably come a long way and you're hungry too, but I don't think that'll solve your hungry problem, nor will it solve the problem of the 10,000 sages. Can you think of something else? And Krishna just smiled. He repeated himself. Give me the little piece of spinach. So they gave him, with devotion, because they were great Christian devotees, they gave him a little piece of spinach. Krishna is who creates millions and millions of worlds, who has an entirely spiritual body made of knowledge, bliss, and eternity, who doesn't need anything to eat, but who enjoys the love and the devotion with which things are offered to him. That's what satisfies his hunger. So it's not the quantity, it's the quality of the devotion. So when he took that little bit of spinach on his tongue, he said, that's so good. He said, that has completely satisfied me. And the Pandava said, okay, I'm glad that satisfied you. Now, what about the sages, Krishna? We've got about 12 minutes left now and counting down. So when Krishna, the point is, the root of all existence, the source of everyone and everything, tasted that small morsel of food given by his pure devotees, he was satisfied. He's the root of creation. And when you satisfy the root, all the flowers, roots, twigs, and leaves also become satisfied. And as soon as Krishna declared himself satisfied by that little morsel of spinach down at the river, all of a sudden, these sages who just a moment ago were starved, would have described themselves as famished, lost their hunger. They felt like they'd just eaten a big meal on Thanksgiving Day. You know what that was like, right? Recently. So now, Krishna, in the most innovative, comical, humorous way, had turned the tables. Now the sages didn't want to go back because being stuffed up to the neck, they thought they would not be able to do justice to the feast that the Pandavas were offering to them. And then they would incur the displeasure of their hosts. So rather than do that, they tiptoed away. They slinked away. So what happened there? Kunti's sons were saved by the grace of God. This previously highly dangerous situation had been completely turned around, and now those sages were slinking away in humiliation, in embarrassment, not wanting to offend the Pandavas. Now I ask you, who but God, as a 16-year-old boy playing on his flute, would contrive such a novel and humorous way to save his devotees from danger? So just like with Kunti in our lives, when things look impossible, you don't see a way, you can still stay encouraged by remembering what Krishna has done for you and done for other devotees in the past. These stories are meant to give us courage in the face of adversity. And in our own lives, if we flip back through the archives, he does that every week. You can go around and back too. You've seen with your own eyes, you've seen in your own history, with your own eyes, the times that Krishna God made a way when you didn't see a way. You thought you were stuck, but Krishna opened a door. He caused someone to be good to you. You faced that loss. Some or other, you didn't think you could do it, but you got through that loss of a loved one. You got through that divorce. You never thought you'd be happy again, but Krishna lifted you out of that pit. He turned your mourning into dancing. And here you are. Welcome. Now, I'm just going to tell this story, and you'll see why I'm telling it in a minute. Noah Webster, after whom the dictionary was made, was obviously a lexicographer. He was very stickler about language and the meanings of words. How could he not be? He actually standardized the American English Dictionary at the beginning of the 19th century. So he was very particular about the exact definition of words. So one day, his wife opened the kitchen door and discovered Noah Webster kissing the maid, hot and heavy, we'd say nowadays. Mrs. Webster exclaimed. She says, "Why, Noah, I'm surprised." He said, "No, my dear, we're surprised. You're amazed." Surprise refers to the unexpected. Amazement means to be made speechless, astounded at what you see. And we all were required to take history in school. We read books like Morrison and Commager, which were a secular retelling of the history of various countries and how they achieved national greatness. But real history, spiritual history, is quite different. It tells the real story. It's not by our prescience, our intelligence, our energy, our ethnicity that we got to where we are, to the pinnacle and the peak of success that we've achieved, but it is much, much more been about God's cutting us slack and showing graciousness. Spiritual history is much more full of surprise and amazement. It's much more like comedy than it is tragedy. The way Krishna, or God, conducts history for his devotees is with unexpected occurrences, righteous humor, unanticipated twists and turns of plot, astonished laughter, and supernatural miracles, sleights of hand. You have to laugh at the promises of God. Now, anybody in their secular mind is going to, on their turn, laugh at the promises of Krishna, or God, because they're so incredible, they're so contrary to expectations, so improbable in the light of the accepted realities of a secular world. In the materialistic world and in the materialistic mindset, the promises of God will almost always appear ludicrous. And yet, I can tell a story. Don't go, Bobby. You want to stay for this. Bobby and I, we were serving in the Los Angeles temple for 10 years, and we had a dream that Krishna put in his heart to pioneer, to break ground in some other part of the country. Against all logic and reason, Krishna inspired us to start a temple, and of all places, Spanish Fork, Utah. There were no devotees here. We had no resources. We had no land. And even the Indians, who are natural allies, were almost non-existent in the Utah Valley back in the 80s. There were a few North Indians in Salt Lake City, but none down here. So, and not only that, but 90% of the population in Utah Valley is of another religion. Now, they've written books since the 80s about what it takes to plant a church in a new area. And one of the first things they say is go door to door, do some sort of a survey, and if 60% of the people are not church-going, then you can take it the next step. You may have a chance to plant your own church in that area. What would the researchers, what would the authors say that if you came to an area where 90% of the people are church-going, not only that, they're all the same church, what would be your odds? What would be the chance of success? Probably less than zero. There are books about the science based on research and development and experience. They would say, the experts, the talking heads would say, it's impossible to plant a new church in an area where more than 50% of the people are church goers. It's impossible. On top of that, it's further, more so impossible to plant a church where you have no prior members existing. No one's calling for you to come there and help them out by building a church. And it's also impossible to do any of the above two without outside resources and help, which we never got. Therefore, this building in which you're sitting should not have ever happened. By all the statistics, by all the research. It defies all the research. It defies all the data, all the talking heads, all the expectations. The reason this church is here, the actual reason this church is here, and you guys got to lighten up with this, okay? Work with me on this, okay? You didn't laugh at my last 3 jokes. So at least I expect a little giggle here, okay? The actual, factual, objective reason why this church is here is because God has a sense of humor. He's a prankster. That's why we're here. You just have to laugh in what? According to Noah Webster, both. You don't have to choose between surprise and amazement. You can experience and enjoy both, surprise and amazement, at the unexpected, the unanticipated, the impossible. In the face of that, you can be amazed, speechless, and astounded. When tourists walk through the door and they ask, how in the world did this Hare Krishna temple get here? I tell them, God parted the Red Sea. He just proved that he could do what no one would expect him to do. He has a sense of humor. I don't give a detailed answer about how many members we had, how much funds we had. The truth is that Vi and I, when we came from Los Angeles to Spanish Fork to plant a temple, we had no idea what we were doing. We were absolutely clueless. We were like the Keystone Cops. We could tell you right now, yeah, we had it all planned out, like that, but we'd be lying to you. We were like the Keystone Cops. We were like Charlie Chaplin, fools rushing in where wise men would fear to tent. But the reason that there's a beautiful temple in Spanish Fork, not only that, but another beautiful temple in Salt Lake City, had nothing to do with human greatness or Vi and my talents and abilities. Not that we don't have talents and abilities, but that's not the reason it happened. It happened because of the graciousness of God, who bypassed the experts, the learned, the high, the mighty. And he works with the fools, the dreamers, and the outcasts. I'm here tonight to tell you the stuff of comedy. Krishna established a world-class temple in Spanish Fork, Utah, because he's a prankster. He did it because no one would have ever expected such a thing, and everyone would get amazed and astounded at the otherworldly power and the goodness of God. So, applying this to our own lives. When you face tough times and your dream seems to have receded out of reach, and every voice whispers to you, it's never going to happen. Try this. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Go back and replay your victories. Relive the times Krishna made a way. Remember how he put you at the right place at the right time. You met that person and fell in love. Remember the birth of your first child. Remember how Krishna spared you from that horrible accident on the freeway. If you're going to overcome obstacles, if you're going to reach your highest potential, you have to learn to remember. Review your past history with God. Remember not only that he protected you, but how he surprised and amazed you in the process. And when you go through your day, constantly thinking about Krishna or God's goodness, how he's protected you, vindicated you, and promoted you, not only will your faith rise in your heart, but you'll live your life with an attitude of excitement and expectancy that then allows God to jump in and do even greater things in the future. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We will arrive at the destination where we are meant to arrive on the stepping stones of Krishna's grace. By Krishna's grace and not by our own talents and abilities. We have to use those, but ultimately it's God who has the last word. And we will arrive where we're supposed to arrive only by the grace of God. We don't have to have it all right, worked out. We don't have to have it perfectly analyzed. You just have to have a right heart. You just have to want to honor God, keep him first place, and trust him that he'll get you to where you're supposed to be. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This was a commercial I saw about Michael Jordan. You know, he was nine times the All-Star, 4 times MVP, 2-time Olympic gold medalist. In the commercial, to TV commercial, so he's walking in front of the camera. His stride is easy, his smile secretive and charismatic, knowing as he moves through his gauntlet of friends and well-wishers. He walks like a winner. After all, this is Michael Jordan, a man who made the impossible seem routine and the merely difficult look easy. And in the voiceover to this commercial, he says what you wouldn't really expect him to say. This is what he says: I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost more than 300 games. 26 times I've been entrusted to take the game-winning shot, and I missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life. Now, the really interesting thing in all of that is that none of it stopped God's blessings from chasing Michael Jordan down, from getting him to the top in his field. And maybe you can join me in saying also that none of us would be where we are today if it wasn't for God's graciousness. Some of the things that we've done, the crowd used to run with, the inattentive driving, the temper tantrums, the disrespect we've shown, the false pride, all of that or any of that should have taken us out. But Krishna showed us his grace, not once or twice, but again and again and again. Those weren't lucky breaks. They weren't coincidences. They were Krishna, God, directing the steps, putting us at the right place in the right time, or keeping us from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And when I think about all that is taken to get me to where I am right now, standing before you today, it makes me want to burst out singing the name of the Lord in awe, surprise, celebration, amazement, and thanksgiving. When you recognize what God has done, that all through your life there has been his hand getting to where you need to be, then it's easy, it's automatic to honor God. It's easy then to be grateful, to serve, grateful to give, grateful to worship. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You know when you've got God's name on the tip of your tongue that you're living in a grace house. You know that you're a passenger in a grace car. You're working with a grace job. You didn't just marry over your head, you married grace. Maybe you felt you were about to have a nervous breakdown, but grace showed up. You should be depressed, but grace turned you around. You could be in prison, but grace kept you out. Perhaps you even tried to take your own life, but grace kept you alive. Grace gave you that baby. Grace gave you that idea. Grace opened that door. Don't take grace for granted. Keep grace in the forefront of your mind. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Prabhupada says in the purport of the Bhagavad Gita, one should unhesitatingly accept Krishna as the supreme savior of all living entities. With faith and love, one should surrender unto him. There was a story about a minister who had a strange dream. He dreamt that he died and he was trying to get into heaven. And when he approached the pearly gates, St. Peter told him he needed 100 points to get in. Probably the minister said, well, I was pastor for 43 years. St. Peter said, that's 1 point. Is that all? Yes, sir, said St. Peter. He said, well, I visited a lot of shut-ins. St. Peter, that's another point. Pastor said, I work with young people. He said, you're up to 3 points. He said, I developed a number of excellent scout programs. That's worth 1 point. You have 4 points now. You need 96 more. So the minister said, oh, no. I don't think I feel so helpless. I feel so inadequate. Except for the grace of God, I don't have a chance. Peter smiled and said, grace of God, 96 points. Come on in. The sooner that we surrender our will to do God's will, the better off we're going to be. You're not giving up anything in that direction. You're gaining purpose. You're gaining destiny. You're gaining meaning. You're gaining direction. You're gaining a life more rewarding than you could ever imagine. We're going to finish off with Queen Kunti, with whom we started. Queen Kunti remembered the many troubles and dangers that her sons had endured and survived by the grace of Krishna. When she recalled the many times that Krishna had saved them, she became so overwhelmed by love that her throat choked up and her eyes filled with eyes. She said, my dear Krishna, the welfare of my sons and I was assured even in the midst of all kinds of dangers only because we took complete shelter at your lotus feet. And Prabhupada says, while the Lord reciprocates with all souls, we're all sons and daughters of God. But for those who keep him first place by chanting his holy names, the Lord receives and gives, the Lord gives them his special grace. They just only want him and nothing else. So these are Kunti's prayers to Krishna after Krishna has saved them from all their dangers and Krishna's returning to his capital city. Just one moment here. Little music never hurt, right? Uh-oh. Krishna mounted his chariot, bound for Dwarka. Kunti's heart pounded, sadness abounded. Her prayers took flight, a soulful plea, bittersweet. Krishna, protector of Dharma, our guiding light, by our side, every sight, every fight. Your lotus eyes, your lotus feet, shining so bright, illuminating our path through many a dark night. Without you, our fame and deeds will fade. Pandavas and Yadus in sorrow's shade. Your footprints grace our kingdom's ground, but when you're gone, darkness will surround. Lord, I'm on my knees, my heart full of awe. You're the original without any flaw, within and without, in the big and the small, apart from any material laws. You're invisible to all. Kunti's prayer, a soulful plea. In trials and triumphs, your grace we see. Devotion's path sets us free as the Ganges rushes from the high Himalayas to the sea. Let our love, Lord, flow to your lotus feet. Retracing our steps, you saved us from poisoned cakes. Our house set ablaze, exiles' displacement, raging battles, cannibals' chase. You shielded Draupadi from disgrace. On the Kurukshetra plains, you erased our enemies, no trace remains. Ashwatthama's weapon you turned away. Calamities we'd welcome just to see you stay. For seeing you means no more rebirth, a gift greater than all the treasures of the earth. Let trials repeat if it means seeing your face. For seeing you means no more birth, no more death in this endless race. Your presence, our liberation, every place. Kunti's heart sings your glories we embrace. Those who chant your names both day and night see your lotus feet in purest light. You're easy to reach for the weary soul, but those who are after heavenly pleasures, long life and gold, they can't approach you, their hearts are cold. You belong to the poor, material exhaustion, the path to your door. Ashwatthama's weapon you turned away. Calamities you welcome just to see you stay. For seeing you means no more rebirth, a gift greater than all the treasures of this earth. Kunti's prayer, a soulful tree. In trials and tribulations, your grace we see. Devotion's path set us free as the Ganges rushes from the high Himalayas to the sea. Let our love, Lord, flow eternally to your lotus feet. Let calamities repeat if it means seeing your face. No more birth, no more death in this endless race. Your presence, our liberation, every place. Kunti's heart sings. Your glories we embrace. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. The reason that you are where you are today is that you have a destiny that Krishna wants you to fulfill. He has assignments for you to accomplish. You may have given up on his grace, but his grace will never give up on you. He chose you before you chose him. You might as well recognize you're a marked man. You're a marked woman. The creator of the universe has his hand on your life. And if we surrender to his guiding grace, we'll be able to say, along with Kunti, on this particular weekend, on every weekend, every day of every week, of every month, of every year, thank you, Krishna, that I'm still here. My enemies tried to persecute me, but they were not able to finish me off. That depression couldn't kill me. That divorce, those legal problems, they couldn't finish me off. The haters, the critics, the naysayers who tried to push me down, their best was not enough. I'm still standing. I'm still strong. I still have a smile on my face. I had a setback. I had disappointments. But Krishna, I'm still in the game by your grace. I went through a loss, but by your grace, I kept moving forward. Thank you, Krishna, that people can't finish me off. A bad break, betrayal, rejection, sickness cannot finish me off. Why is that? Because when my enemies move against me like a flood, why is it that they cannot finish me off? Because you, Lord, are the creator of millions and millions of universe, the protector of your devotees, and you have the final say. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Start remembering your victories, the times Krishna healed you, the times he promoted you, the times he turned your problems around. When you always remember that we live and we breathe, we conquer our enemies and we overcome our obstacles only by his loving grace, you'll see the fullness of his favor in your life in this time around, and next life you'll go back to home, back to Godhead. Thank you very much for listening to our part 2 Thanksgiving talk following from last Sunday. If you'd like to join me, raising your arms. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Do you want to lead the arti? We can have the arti ceremony now. You're welcome to stand, join us. I'm going to go downstairs. Victories, Shri Shimani's divine